Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron. Very nice day today, April 30th, 2009. Next week we have the May 4th town budget meeting for the next budget, and that starts at 7 o'clock up at Gilbert School in the auditorium, and maybe about 150 to 200 people might show for that, plus they might have a petition too, I don't know, but it'll be an interesting meeting. Now, tonight's show is going to be a lot about budgeting and the budgets in town and upward pressures on one budget, what's going in on Monday, and then there'll be also some discussion about the 08-09 budget that we are in the process of implementing in our town for at least 2 more months. And I thought that it would be very appropriate tonight to read you an old fable written by Aesop, who lived from 620 BC to 560 BC. He lived about 70 years. And he wrote a famous fable called The Grasshopper and the Ant. Once there lived ants and grasshoppers in a grassy meadow. All day long, the ants would work hard, collecting grains of wheat from the farmer's field far away. They would hurry to the field every morning as soon as it was light enough to see by and toil back with a heavy grain of wheat balanced on their heads. They would put the grain of wheat carefully away in their larders and then hurry back to the field for another one. All day long they would work, without stop or rest, scurrying back and forth from the field, collecting the grains of wheat and storing them carefully in their larders. The grasshoppers would look at them and laugh. "Why do you work so hard, dear ants?" they would say. "Come rest a while and listen to our song." These grasshoppers played both the accordion and the fiddle. Summer is here. The days are long and bright. Why waste the sunshine in labor and toil? The ants would ignore them, and with heads bent would just hurry to the field a little faster. This would make the grasshoppers laugh even louder. "What silly little ants you are." They would call after them, "Come, come and dance with us. Forget about work. Enjoy the summer. Live a little." And the grasshoppers would hop away across the meadow, singing and dancing merrily. But alas, the summer faded into autumn, and autumn turned into winter. The sun was hardly seen, and the days were short and gray. The nights were long and dark. It became freezing cold, and snow began to fall. The grasshoppers didn't feel like singing anymore. They were cold and hungry. They had nowhere to shelter from the snow. They had nothing to eat. The meadow and the farmer's field were covered in snow, and there was no food to be had. "Oh, what shall we do? Where shall we go?" wailed the grasshoppers. Suddenly they remembered the ants. "Ah, we shall go to the ants and ask them for food and shelter," declared the grasshoppers, perking up. So off they went to the ants' houses and knocked at their doors. "Hello, ants," they cried cheerfully. "Here we are to sing for you as we warm ourselves by your fire, while you get us some food from those larders of yours that you gathered during the summer." The ants looked at the grasshoppers and said, "All summer long, we worked hard while you made fun of us. And you sang and danced. You should have thought of the winter then. Find somewhere else to sing, grasshoppers. There is no warmth or food for you here." And the ants shut the door in the face of the grasshoppers. The moral of this story, there are many morals depending on which version you read over all these years. It is wise to worry about tomorrow today. And we'll be talking a bit about that tonight. We will now go to the agenda. You did see a picture there, 620 to 560 BC of Aesop. It's a woodcut, actually. But now, as far as the agenda is concerned, I just gave you my comments. Very appropriate for the times we're in here in the country and state and Winsted. I'm going to talk a bit about the town budget, fiscal 9-10 update. I'm going to talk a bit about the town budget for the next fiscal year, the following one, not the one we're going to vote on Monday, or that we're going to have a meeting on Monday, but the one for the year after that, 2010, 2011. I know the town hall is already working on that budget, starting to gather information, because it needs to be started now and it needs to be worked on throughout the year until it's finally approved by the town next year. I'm going to give you a little bit of information on the 2008-2009 budget analysis that was given to me by the town hall. Henry Centrella, the finance director. These are his numbers, not mine. Any mistake in transposing these numbers for the charts I have here that you can read is mine, not his. We're going to have fiscal 9-8 fund balance analysis. Again, information provided by the town, and I'll be presenting that to you unedited this evening so you can see for yourself. If you want copies of all this information, you can either go to the finance director or the town manager or perhaps even the town clerk, and you can get this information. And then if we have time, and I hope we do, I want to talk about additional revenue forecast example I put up last week. I've added a few places to it again this week because I'm trying to evolve it into something useful. I'll just go over that if we have a little time. If not, I'll talk more about it next week. Now, what I want to do is start off by saying to you that budgets are a perfect example of management by objectives and management by exception, using the techniques of positive thinking, lateral thinking, and system thinking that I touched upon last week. Budgets are made by objective, to the best of the ability of the people preparing the budget with the information that they have available to work with. So when it's time to create a budget, everybody gives input to whoever's creating the budget and says, and there's wide input, comes from everybody in town just about that works for the town or is associated with the town or subcontracts to the town, provides a lot of information. And the information is usually historical information. For example, how much have we spent on oil to heat the buildings over the last 10 years on average? You'll notice on this program I use a lot of 10-year averages because that's gives you an indication of what's going to happen in the future. Doesn't always guarantee that that'll happen, but it gives you a pretty good idea. The next is the best estimate approach, which you also have to apply, historical and then also best estimate. What do we think we will spend in a certain area this week, if it's going to be different than the historical averages? And the more information you get, best estimate information you can get from reliable people, and it's conservative estimating, then you can come a little closer to preparing a more realistic budget. And then the third thing is known information, where you absolutely know that your rent is going to cost X or your new police car is going to cost Y. That's all pretty factual and known information. So with historical information, best estimating, including the people that are in the organization that have to live with these budgets, and known information from anybody. You can gather that information from vendors, people in the organization, users of the facilities, anything you can find. That's what goes into preparing a budget. So by its nature, a budget is not perfect. A budget is best guess scenario by the people creating the budget, and normally you have everybody in the town organization involved one way or another in helping you create the budget because you need the information from them. And then you be best to involve unions in these negotiations for budgets and everything. Anybody who has any effect on the town and its spending practices. Now, no matter how good you do preparing a budget, there are no perfect budgets. Budgets will change as information changes, or as there is an emergency, or the medical costs jump up by 20% instead of the expected 5%, that kind of thing. So you have to be able to handle that one way or another. Now, what do you do once you have all these objectives? All these objectives have been agreed at the town budget meeting and voted on at the town referendum, and you have a budget that must be lived in within the charter rules and regulations. Then you have a budget, and you must manage that budget as a team. That means all 7 select people, the town manager, the town manager's direct reports, everybody involved, union people, everybody. You manage by exception. So what you do is you watch every day, every week, every month, and you see, are we going to be on budget? Are we going in the right direction? Are there any surprises? If there have been surprises, managed by exception, how are we going to handle that? What are we going to do? Do we have to go to the taxpayers for another vote of confidence? Or do we try to manage within this budget? And there are rules in the charter that says we must try to manage within this budget. And we must try to get to this budget that was agreed at the beginning of the year. So now what happens with the Harvard Business School rules is more like you review at a high level for big companies quarterly. And quarterly you make those decisions. There's no reason why we can't do it weekly or bi-weekly. Now I do want to say to you that it takes the finance department time and energy to be able to prepare these budgets and to prepare these exceptional updates. So the more updates you ask for, the more they have to spend on them, and there could be a problem there with the payoff. So usually you do it monthly or quarterly so people can get on with the job and the rest of the time. But decisions must be made. And this is where the real use of lateral, positive, and system thinking come into effect. Because you've got to look for ways to make this budget and still get the work done satisfactorily. And that can be very, very time-consuming and costly, and it can also be very, very difficult because you've done a lot of that already when you created the budget, especially in the years where you have a 0 increase each year. Now, in most budgets, we'll have a backup plan and say, if this happens or something emergency happens, we will go and do this instead. We also have the fund balance, which I'll talk a bit about tonight, which is really for major catastrophic problems like the flood of '55 or the town burning down or the circus fire in Hartford, that kind of thing. So that's that. Now, what you need here are analysts, systems analysts, people who know how to handle and work with these things, and you have to work very close with the business office and the salespeople and everybody involved in this whole thing, and try to come up with facts. And the more facts you get, the better off you are. And the more you check out your facts, the better off you are. So budgets, both in the planning stage and in the exception stage, the reviewing stage, throughout the year, are open to information and question. Good people who manage budgets properly ask for input. Now, they do expect this input to be given positively, positive thinking, in a way that helps everybody, creates better teamwork, and gets things moving along. That is what should happen when there is good teamwork, and when it gets to the point where people, it looks like people may be trying to undermine the management team, or the town manager, or the selectmen, or the finance department, or anything else, then that throws a big clink in the whole system. So it can't be seen to be that way. And if people go to the newspapers and stir up things, or the newspapers go to people, that doesn't help either. So it's teamwork that's necessary, using these tools, and communication in a positive way. Everybody's got to trust each other and work together. And sometimes that takes a long time, because if people have built up a lack of trust over the years, it's very difficult then to obtain the trust from your fellow appointees or elected officials. Okay, now I'm going to just talk a bit about what's going on at the national level. Not much. I just want to show you on the chart here that the kind of 4 steps we're going to go through over the next few years as far as the financial markets are concerned. So first of all, you're going to see bottoming out. That's sort of, some people think it's happening now, some people don't. We may be bottoming out now in the financial markets, some more than in others. But that's usually the first step. Everybody's trying to find out, when are we going to be bottoming out? Because once we decide where the bottom is, then maybe we can start to go to grow and go forward again towards the goal of where we were before the crash. We never make it, but when we crashed from the dot-com crash many years ago, we're still in that. We haven't recovered yet to the same heights we were at that time. The next indicator will be the financial markets. Once we get past and everybody's agreed that we have bottomed out and other things have taken place in the economy, then financial markets will start to show, there'll be the first indicator that we're beginning to move out of this difficult period. After that comes the economy. Then the economy will begin to grow after the financial markets forecast, or probably even slightly in parallel, because usually they can't tell you that the economy is growing until they can look back a year. It's just like the crash. They had to look back a year to see that, hey, this recession started a year ago. It's always easy for economists to look backwards. Not very hard for them to predict the future. Not easy, I mean, not very easy for them to predict the future. So you got to be very careful with economists, like you do with every other industry in the world. And then last will be jobs, and that's why I say on this program, they're not a leading indicator. They're a trailing indicator, because the economy will be getting better, the financial markets will be getting better, we'll have bottomed out, but jobs will, unemployment will last for maybe a year or two or more after that. Could be less, nobody knows for sure. Now the one thing I want to point out about this is, it may or may not happen that way. You never know, but that's what most people think the approach will be and has been in history, and they expect that to happen. They're still arguing over how serious this whole thing is in the first place. So now the fiscal 2009-10 budget, 0 tax increase if approved at referendum by the voters of Winston and Winchester. The Board of Education and Gilbert are in the process of trying to resolve the additional 1.92% decrease that was placed upon them by the selectmen about a week and a half ago. They did have a meeting, I read in the paper, where they are in agreement, the two parties. They have to go to their boards, however, for approval. So that's the next step. So it looks like they're making some progress there. Now I want to point out here that I read in the paper where Dr. Cressy said we would probably save well, the last time cost us about $100,000 one way or another to go through arbitration between two of our own peers here, the Board of Education in Gilbert. That's kind of a waste of $100,000. And these are the kind of things that recessions and taxpayer associations help to force out. If we can save $100,000 by getting together and discussing the issues and coming up with an agreeable answer that nobody likes, I mean, it's going to be unpalatable to everybody, then we should be able to do that in good times, too. We don't have to have a recession and a taxpayer association looking over our shoulder to figure this out. So kudos to them. They're going to get through it. Even last time they said they wanted to try to make it through this year without going into our arbitration, and it looks like they might make it if they get approval from each of the boards. Please hope that happens. The annual town budget meeting is on May 4th. That's Monday, 7 p.m., Gilbert School Auditorium. Try to make it if you can. Let's hope it all goes well. The budget can be cut there, but not increased. Now, I put this up last week. I got a little more information for you this week. The fiscal 10-11 budget upwards pressure. I did this about a year ago to show you that we're already a bit in trouble here now on the fiscal 10-11 budget, the one for after this, for the following year. The revenue part, the state grant, will be cut by the state to the town of Winchester next year. Their projection is $190,310 less next year than we get this year. Now, that's a number that we must work with. That's an objective. We must use that number until somebody tells us it's not true, and that has to be somebody official at the state level. I got it out of the newspaper when they went through all the local towns and told how much less they were going to get. The good news is the following year, 2011, 2012, is projected to be the same number, so we won't get a cut in that year. It won't be 190. It'll still be 190,310 the following year, as I understand it. I hope I'm not wrong on that. Now, I talked to you about low SIP last time. There's an account in our budget, page 1, and it has is the budget, page 1. You can get them down at the town clerk's office or in the town manager's office. They'll certainly be there, copies of them there on Monday night. But I would advise anybody who's really interested in the budget to get down to town hall tomorrow or this evening. I guess by the time this program's on, it'll be closed. But anyway, get there, get a copy of it, go over it, and be prepared when you come to the meeting. That would help a lot. You'll be one of the few that's prepared if you prepare by reading that budget. The low SIP is money that's in the revenue side of the budget that's already there. And it can be replenished eventually when more grant money is received. So what happens here is we have the $200,000. If we decide we want to do $100,000's worth of road work in the Public Works Department, we can spend that $200,000. It's in the revenue side of this budget coming up. And then we would apply, when it's finished, when the work's finished, we would apply for a grant for 100% of that money to be reimbursed to us, to be put back into the low SIP account to be used for the next round of work. So the town has a decision here. They have a couple of decisions to make. One is they cannot spend any money on low SIP, in which case they won't have any expenditure, and they won't have to use the $200,000 in revenue that's in the budget. So it'll be there the following year in case they want to use it then. Or they can spend the money on doing road work, let's say it's $200, and then wait until the budget is replenished by the grant they're going to have to go after and get approved, and then they'll have it. So there's a time frame lapse there that may or may not make it in the same year. So we have to be careful next year, the following year, if we haven't got the money back, then it's probably not best to plan on it. So we'll have to make sure that we don't plan on an extra $200,000 of work. because we won't have the money to cover it until we get the money back. So that's a little tricky. If you want to know more about it, talk to the Public Works Department director or to the financial director or to the town manager, and they can bring you up to date on that. It's a little bit of a tricky one. Now, as far as expenditures are concerned, salary increases, we have to plan something for salary increases. There are people who don't think we should have any salary increases, and that may be, that may win out in the end. But as a responsible planner, you have to put something in there for salary increases because of commitments with the unions and all that kind of thing. So I've put in for minus 60,000 in fiscal year 10 and 11 for increases that we already may be committed to or may commit to along the way. That may end up being zero, but right now I'm going to put in 60,000 because I want to be conservative. You can always drop it, 60,000, but if you raise it by 60,000 from zero, you'll get a lot of pushback from people. Now, as far as health costs are concerned, as I mentioned last week, a few years ago, we had a 19% increase in our health costs. It was when Bruce Grezik was here. And we spend now about $1,200,000 on health care costs for our employees. So, and the number is expected to go up, as I said last week, between 5% and 20%. It may go up 0%. That's highly unlikely. But it is likely that it could go up somewhere between 5 and 20%, and I think the town manager has got some kind of an inkling there from some of the meetings he goes to, although there's nothing for sure, of course. So if we go up 5%, that's a $60,000 hit on our budget. If we go up 10%, it's a $120,000 expense increase. If we go up 15%, it's $180,000 budget increase. And if it's 20%, it's $240,000 just for that alone. Well, let's hope it isn't. Let's hope it's 0%. But the reason they go up with these is because of the nature of the people that are using the benefits. If the people using the benefits have a lot of problems, health problems, and they're very expensive to maintain, then the cost of the benefit will go up to the town of Winchester. So I say that the upwards pressure, and this is just a rough feel, based upon the information I have available to me, that we could be between $450,310 less and $690,310 less if these health care costs do go up to 240%, $240,000, right? Be somewhere less than this if not. Now, if LoSiP is removed and we don't do any work on LoSiP, then we'll still have that $200,000 in the revenue side of the budget. We won't spend any of it on the expense side of the budget because we won't do the work. So then our upwards pressure will be between $250,310 and $490,310. So you can see we haven't even approved the 09-10 budget, and won't for at least another month. And we already have a terrific upwards pressure on the following year. So a lot of work has to be done on that by the townspeople, selectmen, town manager, and all. So that's why I read the story, the grasshopper and the ants. Part of the problem is that we're not prepared for this kind. We don't have a lot of money in the bank. And I'm going to talk a bit about that tonight. There is a lot of question about that. I'm going to try to leave Brian's opinion out of this and just present the figures. So I'm going to talk right now about 2008, 2009 funding issues estimated by the finance director on 4/2/09. And he estimated that we could be, if all things go the way he's estimating, and they may not, he's estimating that we could be down by $332,749. Of that, the estimated budget shortfall in revenues will be $167,063, consistent to the 11/18/2008 estimates. These are information right in the report. Now you got to remember, between the time this budget was done and now, we've had this great crash. And the revenue in our own town has gone down significantly. We still have 2 months to go to try to manage, get in a little bit more revenue. And that's one of the top priorities of the selectman and the town manager and the town employees. So we still have 2 months there. So this will all change, of course, over the next 2 months, one way or the other. Now, as far as funding sources are concerned, and Henry did define what a source and a need means. We're not going to go now onto the expense side of things for the next few months. Source means available funds, and need means fund transfer required. Now, say before I start here that you have to do things according to the charter. Everybody can get a copy of the charter in the town clerk's office. Read any part you want of it. There are a couple special sections in there that deal with budgets. You should read those. Any questions, talk to the finance director or the town manager about it and get the information you need if you're interested. So we'll just go through here the list. It's exactly the same as the list that I was given, and I just transposed it to be on readable format for television. The first one is electric, and that's minus 10,000. So they're forecasting that by the end of the year to be down by $10,000. Legal for the town attorney to be down by $24,000. Overspent the budget, overspent the budget. Legal outside costs, $24,000 more than budget. And legal labor is minus 15,000. Actually, the minuses, I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. These minuses are less than budget, but we still have 2 months to go. So I made that mistake, sorry. And then the maintenance is $2,000 less than budget. And then that's the maintenance for the structures is $2,000 less. And then the police regular is still got $49,000. I hope I'm reading this to you right. These are, again, these are less than budget, $49,000. The police PCA is less 5,100, and the police overtime is over by 135,000 at this point. So going back again, I was rating it right the first time. Sometimes you get a little confused on these programs, but these are all over budget type issues, and this is where we have money still left in the budget. These are over budget. Then the police clothing is $2,000 over. Police motor vehicle, $5,000. Police tires, $500. Building department overtime, $5,000. Highways regular, $52,000. Highways overtime, $15,000. Highways, $10,000 to the good, and highways supervisors or whatever supplemental is $3,000 over. Highway maintenance, $7,000 minus. Highway maintenance structures, $5,000. Highway salt, $6,000. Cemeteries overtime is still positive, 7,875. Sanitary, 49,139. The rec administration, positive 5,100. Recreation regular, minus 8,700. Rec electric, minus 2,000. Rec maintenance of grounds, minus 2,000. Now this is a big one. Heart and hypertension. We're over there on budget by 112,000, and that's because of new claims and some old claims. If you were watching the selectmen meetings over the year, you saw where they talked about this heart and hypertension, and that's something that we, the town, pay to family members who are entitled to the money. So it's a town expense. So that's a big hit for us in this year's budget. Unnegotiated settlements are positive, 52,000. That means we've done less than perhaps we thought we would, and if we can live with that for 2 more months, that'll help. Postage, over by 15,000. Employment, 2,000. Debt interest on short-term money is $150,000. Positive. Now, I will point out here that as I understand it from the town, we can't move that money around to any of these other accounts because it says in the charter that we can't use that money to help balance these other accounts. And then there's a municipal insurance. Because of our increase, we're at $60,000 there. So what it amounts to here is the total expenditures are minus 165,686 as projected and consistent to 1/16/2009 estimates. So if you take and you add this 165 and the previous number we had for the minus revenue, you come up with 332,749, and that's what the selectmen, the town manager, direct reports, subcontractors and vendors are all looking at this to see how much money do they have available to move between accounts and to try to make as much of a balance in this whole thing. For example, there's an account there that said we're ahead by 52,000. Maybe we can take some of that and move it to an account where we're behind by 150,000 or wherever we're behind by. So that is going to be looked at. That can only be done in the last 3 months of the year, according to the charter. That will be happening over the next 2 months. No guarantee we won't be over budget then, but right now nobody knows because there are too many variables. How much more revenue are we going to get in? How much more are we going to? How much are we going to be able to cut expenses? How much can we move between departments? That kind of thing. So until we have better information, we go by the information that we have now. Meanwhile, everybody's in working busy as bees, trying to get to a zero balance for the year. It's harder to get revenue in than to cut expenses. It's not easy to cut expenses in the last few months of the year, especially when you have obligations, because it's hard to cut any contractual money that you have by contract. Now, as far as the fund balance is concerned, I just blew up what I got from the town hall on this because the fund balance is very important. A lot of rules about the use of the fund balance in the charter, too elaborate to go into here on this program. But this is as of April 13th, 2009. This again comes from the finance director. It's been given out to the selectmen, I guess, a week or so ago, and the town manager. They all have this, and I'm sure they're talking to each other about it, as they should be. So there is some money that's reserved in the fund balance that's for encumbrances that we have already. That's an audited number for as of 6/30/2007. and that's 298,936 for that date. Now on 6/30/2008, this is an unaudited number, as are all those in the column. These are all audited, these are all unaudited. Reserve for encumbrances for 6/30/2008 was $78,333. Now, as far as future expenditures are concerned, 2004, 998 for 6/30/2008. They were 213,970 for 6/30/2007. Remember, these are unaudited numbers here. They could change when the audit happens. So that's one of the management by exception things I'm talking about here. We got objectives. We know certain information. The auditors may change that, or other events may happen. But since this is history, not much is going to change there. But they are unaudited, so that's one of the things that can change. And then the unreserved and undesignated fund balance at that date in 6/30/2008, unaudited, it was 1,237,542, and in 6/30/2007, audited, it was 1,335,335,002. Now, for future authorized uses in this in the next budget, well, in the 2008 and 2009 budget, 2007, 2008 budget, okay, we have, I put up 2 pages there. Now, remember, we always say the total available for use is 1,237,542 and 1,335,002. This is for the 2008-9. This is for the 2007-8, and that's how much is available for use, because all the rest is encumbered one way or the other. So, but the total fund balance, including both encumbered and non-encumbered, is 1,315,875 and 1,663,937. The total available for use on June 30th, 2008 was 1,237,542, and for the year before was 1,335,002. Now, there are some future authorized Main Street authorized uses. The Main Street funding, if we do Main Street this next coming year, and some people think we should do it, some people might not want to do it, is 260,000, and that's carried from the 7-8 budget school projects. Now remember, this is the fund balance, so it crosses years here. The school projects, that's the OCR complaints and other things, is 200,000, 8-9 budget. Might spend it in the 9-10 budget, both of these. But they're in the fund balance, and that's how much they are. Now that could be less. We do have bids from outside contractors to do the work for less than we thought when we planned these, so that has to be looked into. And then there's heart and hypertension. We know we can't do much with that. We certainly can't transfer that money to anything else. We must pay it because we are obligated. So there'll be minus 124,691 for heart and hypertension. And that's for old claims and new claims that we've got since we did the budget. And if you remember, there was a big kerfuffle about that during the year. So the total uses are minus 584,691. The amount available prior to the 08-09 budget operations was 653,851. The budgeted expenditures and revenues 2008-2009 were 31,619,342. And the fund balance as a percent of expenditures and revenue, 2.06%. Again, these numbers are right from Henry's paper. It's a little easier to read them from his paper because I had to split them up here to get them onto the TV camera in a large enough print for you to read. The 2008-2009 funding issues, minus 332,749, and that estimate is as of 4/2/2009. The net available is 320,102. And there was a fund transfer request for the registrar of voters for 5,445. So the net available, if all these transfers happen and all this stuff takes place, the fund balance will be at 314,657. Now again, this is a picture as how it stands today. Nobody should panic over these numbers. What they should do is get in and meet and talk together about what they can do and what are they doing already, and thoroughly understand that, and try to contribute to the solution of the problem. Instead of fanning the flames, all must work together in the town to try to make this work out. My guess is it's going to be somewhere between the numbers. There will be things happen, and there will be things that don't happen. But I couldn't guess what they'll be. It's tougher for the town people to guess what they'll be. There's a lot of question marks here. So I'm going to leave that to the experts. And when I get more official information in the town, I will pass it on to you. Now, Moody's considers the fund balance, among other things, when considering creditworthiness. It's not the only thing they consider, but the fund balance is important. It's our rainy day fund. And we need to keep it in good shape. We need to be adding to the fund balance rather than subtracting from the fund balance. Now, on the other hand, a lot of people will say, well, let's not use the fund balance. Let's go and get a bond and pay interest on the bond. Well, that's not always the best thing to do either. So just like in your own household, this has to be weighed up, carefully considered, and there are differences of opinion. No matter what decision you make, there will be differences of opinion. But the town leaders can make decisions now to balance this so that we don't lose everything in over 320,000 in the fund balance, and that we get some of the expenses reduced, and we try to get a little more revenue in. So that's something that's going to have to be watched, and you'll probably get some information from that time to time at the selectmen meeting. And if I get any more official information that's handed out to the selectmen, town manager, etc., press and all, then I will go over it on this program. Now is the time to keep our heads through all this. If you see anybody not keeping their head, then we have a problem. Now, I'm going to talk a bit now about the solution to all this in the long run. Again, that's why I did the grasshoppers and the ants. The solution is more revenue, as well as some cost cutting here and there wherever we think we can do it in a responsible manner. Now, I did ask some of the people at the town what their priorities were right now in getting through this existing budget, 208, 209. And one of their top priorities is revenue. They're probably the top priority, getting more revenue in the town. The more revenue you get in, the less you have to take from the fund balance. Taking from the fund balance is not easy because you may have to go to a town meeting and get permission, and you may not get that permission. So you can't totally rely on that. But revenue is always in a business got to be the top priority because it pays for everything else. And then the next priority is, one of the priorities that town leaders have is to make sure that anything that protects the people of the town is given a high priority. So that's one of their high priorities. And of course, another high priority is to manage the expenses, so they come in within budget. And that is a difficult operation as well. None of these are easy, but they do have priorities. They are looking at them all now. They're accepting input from people in a quiet, professional manner where discussion can take place. And that's happening. Okay, so what I want to point out to you is, as far as I can see, and I went over it on a whole show last week, and I'm going to touch upon it again today, we have no revenue at all, additional revenue, coming into town over the next 5 years. The ants are out there trying to get in various projects, various factories, various retail operations. But so far, it has not proved successful. And if you look down the line for the next 5 years, you won't see anybody who can guarantee you in the town management or in the commissions or anywhere, any guarantee that these won't be zero for the additional revenue. Additional revenue means additional taxpayers who come to town to help the existing taxpayers shoulder the load. So you need additional taxpayers. Now, every year, we get, say, $1 million, a little less this year, but we get $1 million from our own revenue. So you can't count that. Somebody adding a garage, somebody adding a tool shed, somebody adding a front porch, even some new houses that come to town. That all makes up this $1 million that we get every year on average anyway. This year, a little less. And it's hurting us. So I did this page for you because this is a form. And this is a form that I encourage the town leaders, including the commissions, to keep up to date. And maybe next year we'll see some numbers in here that are positive. And maybe we won't. My guess is we won't, no matter what you do. Because we're far away from getting additional factories to come to town. We're far away from getting a lot of major retailers to come to town. We're far away from getting any of the major residential projects to come to town. Some of that's caused by us. A lot of it's caused by us as a town. Some of it's caused by the recession. But my own view is we should not be in this pickle. We should be able to, have we done things 2 or 3 years ago, not spent 5 or 6 years on things, not fought everybody every inch of the way, maybe we could have some of these things in here now. And I have talked to a lot of the people over time who were trying to get things into town, and they all told me how difficult that was. And when we had the summit meeting at the college about 1.5 years ago, maybe now, that was one of the first things that the business owners said. We got to do something about our land use boards. We got to make it easier for people to come to town, stay to town, and be happy here as businesses. And I haven't heard any update on that, by the way, since. But I am going to show you now what I had last week. I don't have it in the large print this week because we don't have the time to go through it all, but this is the 5-year additional new revenue forecast form. Right now it's empty. It's blank page. For year 1, we have some major residential possibilities, but they're not going to happen in year 1 or year 2 or year 3, most likely. Just to give you an example, one is the Ridge at Winchester. That's called Wallens Hill. Been approved since 03 or 04. Trade Winds Farm at Platt Hill. That's been approved for a few years. Highland Ridge Estates. Approved locally, but still has to get its golf course and its water and sewer permission. Aurora states water and sewer is still needed. Some of these, by the way, come from the state, rest from the town. And then I just added this week the Hudson Wire condo subdivision. That's about 40 condos down on the corner of Route 44 and one of those streets there. It's where the old Hudson Wire company used to be. And that's been for sale for a long time for 40 units on 4 acres. And it's already, I guess, planned and approved. And there's a broker involved trying to sell it. And maybe we can help to get that in. I know of no other ones. If there are some, please let me know and I'll put them on the list. And I am sending this list out to some of the commissions. If you see anything I'm missing, let me know and I'll add it. Retail, last week I mentioned the Kentucky Fried Chicken building. The mall, I didn't mention, but I did this week, the automotive store that's for sale and closed down on Main Street, corner of Main and the old Route 8. There's a cafeteria right next to it that's sitting empty right now. And there's Joe's Lunch old building that somebody has just purchased and over time is going to try to make a restaurant there. Now these people owners of these do pay taxes on the buildings. They just don't pay any taxes on the business for all their machinery and all the things that we charge them tax for. And that's a considerable amount of money, but nowhere near the kind of money you get from these developments. Now, industrial, Lambert K. Highland Lake Hotel I put in that category. You could argue it belongs in a different one, doesn't matter. It's for sale now. Nothing's happened there in years. And the replacement of Homer D. Bronson, which is in bankruptcy, and if I'm correct, and they say that they're probably not going to be, they're probably going to be laying off some of their people over the next few months. So unless something's changed there that I don't know about, I put Homer D. Bronson. We get another business in there. And then for the year 2, it's the same thing all over again. But here I put question marks. Year 3, same thing. Year 4, same thing. And year 5, same thing. Now these numbers should change once we start to get the town commissions and town managers and all to put this information together. So our answer here, grasshoppers and ants, is to get more of the grasshoppers trying to help the ants get this revenue into town. And that's going to take a long time and a lot of hard work, and there is no other answer except to cut the budget in half or whatever and have less facilities. You can argue whether that's good or bad. But anyway, let's get working here, grasshoppers, with the ants, and let's try to bring this money to town sooner rather than later. Thank you. See you again next week.